The ironclad armory was a symphony of destructive intent, where the cacophony of an outdoor shooting demonstration mixed with a heavy metallic tang of gun oil and aggressive cologne. Amidst the blaring noise, a collective hush began to spread, not of respect, but of utter bewildered dismissal. A woman stood perfectly still, her face obscured momentarily by the shadow of the rifle case. She wore the disguise of inconsequence, faded canvas, peeling rubber, and the quiet dignity of someone utterly misplaced. But as her hand, scarred faintly near the knuckles, reached out and tapped the tempered glass counter, her eyes, the color of rich, dark earth, fixed upon the sneering clerk behind it. She did not raise her voice above a whisper, yet the request cut through the manufactured bravado of the room. "Show me the custom MRAI Ghost Edition," she said, her voice smooth and deliberate, "the unreleased version." For the men around her, that rifle was a myth, a shadow whispered in secure rooms. For her, it was simply inventory, and the unnerving, profound silence that followed her statement was the first indication that they were about to witness a legend walk right out of the dark. The ironclad armory was less a retail space and more a shrine to raw aggression. The energy inside was thick with competitive boasts, tossed around like spent casings. The customers, mostly men, their voices booming, their gestures exaggerated, were locked in a constant silent contest to prove who was the most knowledgeable, the most lethal, the most real. It was into this thicket of ego that Ilara walked. Her appearance was a blatant contradiction to the store's aesthetic. Her faded green windbreaker seemed too thin, her jeans too wrinkled, and her sneakers were peeling at the toes. A gray canvas backpack, clearly having seen years of hard use, rested against her back. The immediate reaction was a wave of condescending mockery. Cale, a wiry clerk with a sharp goatee and a professional smirk that promised dismissal, leaned over the counter the moment she stopped. "Hey lady," Cale sneered, his tone grating. "The coffee shop is across the street. You lost, sweetheart. This place sells heavy metal." His voice was loud enough to draw attention, and heads began to turn. A customer named Jax, sporting a backwards baseball cap and a posture that claimed ownership of the premises, whistled sharply. "Canvas bag, worn shoes," Jax called out, crossing his arms and surveying her with theatrical contempt. "Must think this is a vintage boutique or maybe a thrift store." The crowd snickered, finding comfort in the shared judgment. A woman, Serafina, stood nearby, holding a replica pistol like it was a high-end handbag, and shook her head with a saccharine smile. "You've wandered into a man's arena, sweetheart," she declared, clearly enjoying the spotlight. Ilara didn't react. Her dark brown eyes were focused, scanning the room in a slow, steady motion, like radar sweeping a dangerous horizon. She walked toward the sniper rifle section, her steps unervingly quiet, moving with a subtle, focused intent. It was as if she were traversing a tightrope, visible only to herself. Before she reached the glass display, a burly figure named Garrick, his leather vest covered in skull and flame tattoos, planted himself directly in her path, a massive wall of judgmental bulk. "Hey missy, you're blocking the view for the real customers," Garrick boomed, his voice straining to carry over the ongoing gunfire from the demo range. He gestured at her backpack, his lip curling. "What's in there? Your knitting supplies." The crowd roared with laughter, some clapping as if Garrick were delivering a stand-up performance. Ilara paused, her fingers resting lightly on the strap of her canvas bag. She looked up, meeting his eyes. Her face was unmoving, but the stillness in her gaze held his for a flicker of time longer than he expected. It was a connection that seemed to strip away the noise and the bravado, leaving a faint unease. Without a word, she simply stepped around him, her worn sneakers brushing the floor so softly it was as if she were a ghost. Garrick's laugh faltered, his friends nudging him to maintain the momentum, but he could only mutter, "Whatever, she's nobody," sensing the strange, abrupt shift in the atmosphere. Cale, the clerk, followed her as she reached the case. His movements hurried and loud. "But you think you're going to buy a Barrett .50? He challenged. "Those things cost more than your whole outfit." Jax chimed in from where he leaned against a case of gleaming handguns. Bet she's just here for a selfie. Got to get those Instagram likes, right? Serafina threw her head back, laughing loudly, confirming the private joke. Ilara ignored them. She stood straight, her posture neither stiff nor casual, but perfectly balanced, like someone who had frequented such places not as a tourist, but as a professional. Her calm was starting to feel wrong to the onlookers. She wasn't playing the role of the humiliated outsider they expected. A woman named Lydia, in a sharply tailored blazer and glossy red nails, stepped forward from the growing crowd, her voice dripping with artificial kindness. "Oh honey, you don't have to pretend here," Lydia cooed. "We all know you're just browsing." She tilted her head, her smile predatory, and quickly snapped a photo of Ilara's faded windbreaker with her phone. "This will be cute for my story. Lost shopper at the gun shop." A flurry of phones came out, flashes popping, documenting the moment of public shaming. Ilara's hand tightened on her backpack strap, a subtle but visible sign that she had registered the insult. Instead of turning or snapping back, she squared her shoulders slightly, adjusting her stance, her eyes fixed on the display rifles. Lydia's sharp smile faltered, her phone lowering as Ilara's silence stretched out, making the air heavy and uncomfortable. The laughter died, replaced by an uneasy rustle, as they realized their performance hadn't provoked the desired reaction. Cale was desperate to reclaim control. He tapped the counter with a pen, his voice saturated with sarcasm. "So, what do you want, lady? Something shiny to impress your friends?" Ilara's eyes flickered to him, then back to the rifles. When she finally spoke, her voice was low, almost swallowed by the ambient noise, yet it carried an undeniable clarity. "Show me the custom MRAI Ghost Edition, the unreleased version," she instructed. The words landed like shrapnel, shattering the rhythm of the room. Cale's smirk froze mid-curl. Jax, who had been sipping an energy drink, choked, coughing into his fist. Serafina lowered her replica pistol, her eyebrows arching high as if she'd been physically struck. From a dim corner, an older man with a face weathered by sun and hardship, a veteran named Silas, stepped back slightly. His voice was gravelly and slow. "What?" Silas muttered, his eyes wide. "That model's only known to Black Ops personnel." Cale stammered, his voice cracking with genuine panic now. The name of the rifle was far beyond the scope of a casual browser. "I saw one like that in the Eastern Zone 8 years ago," Silas added, his voice low with respect or maybe dread. "Never forget it." Ilara did not blink. She tapped the glass again, her touch light but insistent, as if she were knocking on a door she knew would open. "So, yes or no?" The manager, Rook, a stocky man with a permanent scowl and a tight buzz cut, emerged from the back office. He shot Cale a sharp, reprimanding glance, then moved to unlock the reinforced vault behind the counter without a word. He pulled out a rifle. It was matte black, sleek, and minimalist, fitted with a scope that looked capable of slicing through dense fog. No one in that room, not even the boastful regulars, had ever seen it openly displayed. The existence of the MRAI Ghost Edition was confined to classified, high-level intelligence. As Rook set the weapon on the counter, a wiry teenager named Finn, his vape pen dangling from his lip, pushed through the crowd, unable to contain his disbelief. "Yo, no way she even knows what that is," Finn yelled, egged on by his friends. He pointed scornfully at Ilara's nearly worn-through sneakers. "Look at those kicks. Bet she can't even afford the cleaning kit for that thing." His friends howled with laughter. Ilara's hands stilled on the counter, her fingers grazing the edge of the rifle's transit case. She tilted her head just slightly, catching Finn's eye, and a faint, almost imperceptible smile curved her lips. It was not warm nor cold, simply there. Finn's laughter choked off instantly, his vape pen hovering mid-air as her gaze locked onto him. She said nothing, yet the room felt suddenly smaller, the atmosphere condensing around her. It was as if she had silently claimed all the space he thought he owned. Cale tried to salvage the situation, forcing a loud, hollow laugh. "Okay, fine. You know the name of a fancy gun. But can you even hold that thing? It weighs over 10 kilograms. He crossed his arms, waiting for her to falter under the perceived weight. Jax, trying desperately to regain his footing, picked up a standard rifle and tossed it carelessly toward Elara like a football. "Careful, might snap your wrist," he mocked. Elara caught it one-handed. The motion was fluid and effortless, so smooth it looked like a highly practiced drill. The heavy weapon did not wobble or dip. She held it steady, her arm strong but completely relaxed, as if the 10 kilograms were an afterthought. The room went utterly silent. It was the kind of quiet where every person could hear the rushing beat of their own pulse. Cale's laugh died in his throat, and Jax opened his mouth to speak, then shut it, his superficial bravado crumbling entirely. Elara gently set the borrowed rifle back onto the counter. Her movements were precise, almost tender, showing deep respect for the instrument. "Go ahead, disassemble it," Cale challenged, trying one last time to sound commanding. "Bet you don't know how." Elara's fingers began to move. They worked with the certainty of someone executing a routine they had performed thousands of times. The metal parts separated with soft clicks and rasps. 8 seconds later, the rifle was completely disassembled. Pin, screws, barrel, all laid out in perfect, meticulous order, like a complex puzzle solved in a single breath. A man named Julian, his hair perfectly gelled, wearing a crisp polo shirt, leaned over the counter. He began to clap slowly, each sharp clap deliberate and condescending. "Impressive trick," Julian said, trying to regain the social high ground. "But let's be real, you probably watched a YouTube tutorial last night, right?" He winked at the crowd, who laughed weakly, relieved to have someone break the suffocating tension. Elara ignored him. She slid a single screw back into place, her finger absolutely steady. She paused to adjust it with a tiny flick of her wrist, a movement so precise it bordered on surgical. Julian's clapping slowed, his smile vanishing as she continued reassembling the weapon without glancing his way. The crowd's laughter faded entirely, replaced by a low, uncertain murmur. They were beginning to wonder what other capabilities lay behind that level of focused intent. Elara's silence had become a formidable barrier, and they realized they were on the wrong side of it. Serafina, the woman with the fake pistol, whispered sharply to the person next to her, a tremor shaking her voice. "Who even does that?" Her confidence was visibly cracking. Elara completed the reassembly with the same calm precision. Then she paused, reaching into her worn canvas backpack. She pulled out a simple paperclip and pressed it lightly against the rifle's receiver. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she studied the connection. The crowd leaned in, confused, their murmurs rising. "This bolt is 0.3 millimeters loose," she announced, her voice soft but clear enough to pierce the confused noise. "In sub-zero conditions, it veers off target." In the corner, Silas, the grizzled mercenary, muttered under his breath, a deep shock washing over him. "How the hell does she know that?" Elara glanced at him, her expression blank, but her eyes sharp and penetrating. "Because I used it to hit a moving target from the top of Crimson Apex in level 7 wind." The words were final and heavy, landing in the room like a sonic boom. No one laughed. No one moved. Rook, the manager, looked sick, his jaw tightening as he began to realize the gravity of what he was witnessing. Vivian, a woman with a sleek bob and diamond earrings who had been observing skeptically from the perimeter, stepped forward, her tone sharp and accusatory. "Okay, so you've got some skills," she conceded. "But let's not get carried away. This is a gun shop, not a circus." She gestured pointedly at the canvas backpack, her lip curling in disgust. "What's next? Pulling a rabbit out of that thing." The crowd snickered again, nodding, grateful for Vivian's attempt to score a point against Elara. Elara zipped her backpack closed, the sound sharp in the quiet room, and slung it over her shoulder. She didn't respond. Her fingers lingered on the zipper, tracing the worn fabric as if connecting with a memory. For a brief moment, her eyes fixed on a small, barely visible, faded emblem on the bag, a patch shaped like a viper's head. Vivian's smirk wavered as she spotted the patch, but she quickly dismissed it, turning to the crowd for reassurance. Ilara's silence had a profound weight to it, making everyone in the room feel smaller than they wished to admit. Silas, the mercenary, stepped closer, his boots heavy on the floor. "Crimson Apex," he repeated, his voice gruff, now tinged with something that might have been respect or fear. "That was what, a decade ago?" Ilara did not answer, instead focusing on finishing the reassembly of the rifle, each piece clicking precisely into place. Jax tried to break the mounting tension with a nervous chuckle. "Okay, so you know some trivia. Doesn't mean you can shoot." Rook, sensing a final, desperate chance to regain some control over the collapsing situation, gestured toward the range. "Let's see it then. There's a coin out there. 150 meters. No one's hit it, ever." The crowd parted silently as Ilara picked up the classified rifle. The air outside was sharp with dust and the smell of residual gunpowder. The range stretched out, a long expanse of dirt and targets. A single silver coin dangled from a thin string, glinting innocently in the late afternoon sun. Jax, recovering slightly, shouted, "If she hits it, I'll mop this place with my tongue." The crowd laughed, but it was thin, hesitant, laced with a growing uncertainty that suggested they feared they had gravely misjudged her. As Ilara walked toward the firing line, a man in a camouflage jacket, Dirk, his face red either from whiskey or sun, called out, "Hey, little lady. Don't trip over that rifle. It's bigger than you are." His buddies roared, one slapping his knee. Ilara did not break her stride. She shifted the massive rifle to her other hand, the movement fluid and graceful, as if she were simply carrying a heavy textbook. Dirk's laughter trailed off, and his friends fell quiet, watching. She set her backpack down, the gravel crunching softly beneath it, and adjusted her grip on the rifle. The crowd chatter faded into a tense, anticipatory hush, all eyes locked on her, waiting for the expected failure. But there was something in her posture, feet planted, shoulders relaxed yet ready, that made the air feel electrified, like the instant before lightning strikes. Ilara stepped up to the line. She didn't adjust the scope. She didn't take a practice swing. She aimed for exactly 2 seconds. Then she fired. The shot cracked through the air, sharp, clean, and definitive. The small coin, 150 meters away, split precisely in half. The pieces spun erratically as they fell to the dry earth. The crowd went completely silent, a vacuum of sound where the world seemed to hold its breath. Cale's mouth hung open, his clipboard forgotten in his trembling hand. Serafina dropped her fake pistol onto the counter, her hands shaking uncontrollably. Silas, the mercenary, stared, his scarred knuckles white as he gripped his own rifle. Ilara didn't smile, nor did she gloat. She simply walked back to the counter and placed the rifle exactly where Rook had set it, every angle perfect, leaving no unnecessary trace of her presence. A young woman named Chloe, in a bright pink hoodie, rushed forward, her phone already recording, trying to reclaim the narrative through mockery. "Okay, that was cute, but let's see you do it again," Chloe chirped, holding her phone up as a challenge. "One shot doesn't mean anything. Probably just luck." The crowd murmured, eager for Ilara to stumble. Ilara ignored Chloe. She reached into her canvas backpack and pulled out a small, worn cloth. She wiped her hands slowly and deliberately, as if cleaning off the invisible weight of their dismissive words. The cloth bore a faint, dark, irregular stain, like blood that had been washed repeatedly but never entirely disappeared. Chloe's phone dipped slightly, her false confidence wavering as Ilara folded the cloth and tucked it away. The crowd quieted further, their eyes darting between the woman and the rifle, finally starting to perceive her reality. Elder Reese, the gunsmith, an older man with thick glasses and oil-stained hands, had remained quiet until this moment. He stepped forward, his eyes fixed on Ilara's hands as she finalized setting down the weapon. "Someone tuned a rifle just like that," Elder Reese whispered, his voice barely audible. "At the Phantom Serpent outpost. Same grip. Same care." He squinted, noticing a faint arrow-shaped scar etched across her knuckles. The room went completely rigid. Silas's voice broke the silence, low and shaky with awe. "She's ghost number 17. Ilara's eyes met his, calm and steady. "I came here for peace," she said softly. "But if needed, I still shoot with precision from 400 meters. It wasn't a threat. It was a simple, cold statement of fact, and it landed like a blade. Jax took a step back, his half-empty energy drink slipping from his hand and splashing loudly onto the floor. Serafina looked away, her face flushed with shame, her confidence utterly demolished. A man in a sleek black jacket, Victor, his watch glinting brightly, leaned toward Rook, the manager, his voice low but audible. "You're really letting her touch that rifle. She doesn't even look like she can afford the ammo." Victor chuckled, adjusting his cuff links, expecting to be validated. Ilara's hand paused over the rifle scope. She tilted her head slightly, meeting his gaze briefly. With a single precise twist, she adjusted the scope's dial. The click was soft, yet in the silence, it resonated like a door being locked definitively. Victor's chuckle died, his cufflinks suddenly feeling too tight on his wrist. Kale, frantic to regain even a sliver of authority, rushed forward with his clipboard. "Hold on. You can't just. Where's your ID? You can't test fire without registration," he demanded. Ilara reached into her backpack and pulled out a small, worn, nearly blank card. It bore no photo, no name, only a faded emblem and a series of numbers etched into the plastic. Kale snorted, holding it up for the crowd. "What's this? A library card?" Rook, seizing the opportunity, raised his voice, desperate to follow procedure. "No documents, no access to high-grade weapons." Ilara slowly and deliberately slipped the card back into her bag. She offered no argument, no explanation. She zipped her backpack and started walking toward the exit, her head held high, her sneakers silent on the polished floor. A middle-aged man with a large beer belly and a faded army cap, Mitch, stepped forward, his voice booming with false courage. "Hey, don't walk away yet. You think you're some kind of hot shot." He jabbed a finger toward her backpack, his face red. "Bet that thing's full of nothing but cheap makeup and dreams." The crowd laughed, but it was a nervous, anticipatory sound. They were waiting for the inevitable downfall. Ilara stopped, her hand resting on the door handle. She turned, just enough to meet Mitch's eyes. Her gaze was tranquil, yet held a profound weight, as if she could see every mistake he had ever made. She released the handle, adjusted her backpack, and opened it just enough to retrieve a small metal case, no larger than a cigarette pack. She set it on the counter. The sharp click of metal on glass echoed in the silence. Mitch's face fell immediately, his finger dropping as he stared at the case, its surface etched with a faint, unfamiliar symbol. The crowd's laughter ceased, replaced by a tense hush. Before Ilara could reach the door again, it swung inward. A man in a tailored black suit and dark glasses stepped inside, his presence instantly altering the air, like a storm front rolling in. He was tall, his face unreadable, his movements calibrated and precise. He scanned the crowded room, his gaze hidden behind the dark lenses, then walked directly toward Ilara. He leaned in close and whispered, his voice low and professional. "Confirmation code 870. Your next mission begins tonight." Then he performed the act that froze the entire room. He lowered his head and placed his hand to his chest, in a subtle, formalized gesture. It was the Phantom Serpent Salute, Ghost Viper Salute, a sign reserved only for the highest tier of operatives, for the legends who existed entirely outside of official records. Kale dropped his clipboard. The loud clatter resonated across the floor. Jax's spilled energy drink rolled under a display case. Serafina pressed herself against the counter, her eyes wide, clutching her purse as if it could shield her. Ilara turned to face the crowd, her voice entirely calm. 60 minutes flew by, didn't they?" she remarked softly. As she started walking toward the door with the man in black, Petra, a woman in a leather jacket with brightly dyed red hair, called out desperately, trying one last time to save face. "But you think you're some secret agent now? This isn't a movie." Petra laughed, but it was forced, and her hands fiddled anxiously with a bullet-shaped keychain. Ilara paused at the door frame and glanced back, her eyes catching Petra's for just a moment. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a single bullet casing. It was old, scratched, but polished smooth, clearly carried for many years. She set it gently on the counter next to the metal case. Petra's forced laughter stopped. Her keychain slipped from her fingers and clattered to the floor. The crowd's eyes locked onto the casing, its silent presence heavier than any boast, holding a vast, untold story. The room remained motionless as Ilara walked out, the courier following her like a loyal shadow. The patrons and staff simply stood, staring at the empty doorway, processing the reality they had just been shown. Outside, the gravel crunched under Ilara's worn sneakers as she approached a black SUV parked at the edge of the lot. She didn't look back to savor their humiliation. She slid inside, the canvas backpack resting securely on her lap. The courier joined her, and the vehicle pulled away, silent and smooth, vanishing into the approaching dusk. Back inside the ironclad armory, the fallout began, quiet but inevitable. Cale, the clerk, eventually picked up his clipboard, his characteristic smirk entirely gone, replaced by shattered confidence. He received a short, cold call from the owner later that day. He was fired, effective immediately, for disrespecting a classified operative. He didn't argue. He packed his belongings and left, his once confident goatee no longer a symbol of superiority. Jax, the backwards cap guy, fared just as poorly. He had recorded the entire interaction, hoping to post it online and look impressive. He uploaded the video that night, captioning it with a snarky comment about the thrift store girl. By morning it had gone viral, but not in the way he intended. The comments tore him apart, condemning his cruelty and ignorance. His sponsor, a major gear brand, dropped him by noon. Their statement was brief and brutal, conduct unbecoming. His direct messages filled with hate, and his follower count plummeted. He deleted the video, but the internet never truly forgets. Serafina tried to treat the incident as a funny anecdote at her next socialite brunch, recounting the tale of the lost shopper. But her usual circle went quiet. They had seen the video, shared across their private chats. The invitations stopped coming. Her social status, built on appearances, could not tolerate association with someone who had mocked a legend. She spent a miserable week hoping for an apology or a reprieve, but nothing arrived. Silas, the old shooter, nursed a beer that night in a dark corner of a local bar. He spoke quietly to the bartender, his voice rough. "Saw a woman like her once," he mumbled, staring into his glass. "Back when I was in the field. You don't forget someone who can make a shot like that." He didn't speak her name, the memory itself being heavy enough. Elder Reese, the gunsmith, spent the next week quietly recalibrating every MRAI rifle in stock. His eyes were focused on the one technical detail she had mentioned, the 0.3 mm flaw. He found it in 3 separate rifles, exactly as she had stated. He fixed them silently, his hands steady, but his mind replaying her meticulous grip, the faint arrow scar, and the way she handled the weapon as if it were an extension of her soul. He had seen 2 decades of shooters, but none like her. He kept the nearly blank card she'd presented, the one Cale had mocked, tucked away in a private drawer, not as a prize but as a chilling reminder. Rook, the manager, received a visit from a government liaison the following morning. No words were exchanged, just a nod, and a sealed file handed over. The liaison was gone before Rook could form a question. Rook didn't open the file. He knew it concerned her and his failure to recognize the authority in his own shop. He spent the day locked in his office, the phone off the hook. The ironclad armory felt fundamentally different after she left. The bravado had been replaced by a quiet, pervasive unease. A week later, a low rumor circulated among the regulars. Someone had found an old, obscure military forum post mentioning a sniper from the Phantom Serpent unit who had completed a 400-meter target strike during a severe storm. The post offered no name, only a code, arrow. The description matched the scar, the grip, and the movement of the woman who had made their bustling shop stand still. Ilara did not return. She never posted about the incident online, nor did she seek validation or apology. Her life was a continuous series of quiet entrances and even quieter exits, moving to the next city, the next objective. She carried her truth not in shouting, but in the way she walked, the way she looked at a room, and the way she held a rifle. A quiet, unshakable strength that left a mark no one in the ironclad armory would ever be able to erase. She was Arrow, and the scar on her hand was just one small piece of a story she would never tell.